The marketing landscape is shifting faster than anyone predicted. The old maps don't work. And the brands that are winning aren't following a better playbook, they're pioneering on without one. This is Brandistry Buzz, a podcast for marketers who are ready for whatever comes next. I'm Nate Challen, brand strategist, marketing executive, and someone who's spent 3 decades helping brands navigate uncertain territories. Each week, we'll take one idea in marketing, leadership, or innovation and follow it through until it's actually useful. Real examples, honest takes, clear recommendations. So let's buzz! This week is not about marketing. It's not specifically about leadership. It's about people. People should be the center of the universe for marketers and leaders. And marketers are people, so are leaders. So indulge me. In a tradition that started 3 years ago with my first article on LinkedIn, my Pride story, this week is my annual recognition of Pride Month. A show of support for the family members, friends, and colleagues in my life who celebrate this month, and the people who love and support them. My personal identities include white, straight, male, Christian, executive, husband, and LGBT parent. 12 years ago, Eva and I became gay parents, not because we came out, but because our son Isaiah did. He was 15, living in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and he told us via text message while he was studying abroad for the summer. 3 years later, when we moved to Frankfurt, Germany, we became trans parents as our son Mackenzie began his transition. A few years after that, our daughter Kaylin began identifying as bisexual just ahead of our move to Montreal. And then there's Lily, our youngest, cisgender and straight, which makes her the queer one among our kids. So each time I've written for Pride, I've tried to add something new rather than just revisit the same territory. And this year I wanted to say something I've danced around a bit. Isaiah's announcement was possibly the most difficult moment in my life, but maybe not for the reasons you would assume. Yes, Eva and I are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Our faith tradition supports a traditional definition of marriage between a man and a woman and regards gender as part of an individual's eternal identity. That creates a genuine challenge for people who don't fit neatly into those definitions, and it creates a challenge for their families too. But our church also holds individual agency, the right and responsibility to make one's own choices, as one of its most sacred principles. And it places love and service to others at the absolute center of what it means to be a disciple of Jesus Christ. The hardest part of that moment in Tennessee wasn't my religion, it was my plans. I had a fairly detailed picture of how Isaiah's life would unfold. College, maybe sports, a mission, marriage in a temple, a certain kind of family. And in the span of a text message, most of that picture dissolved. Not because his life would be worse, but because it would be different from what I had imagined. And I had to grieve Isaiah's imagined future before I could celebrate his actual one. There's also a sudden rupture of trust. He had been carrying this alone, understandably, given what he was navigating. But the fact remained that he had been hiding something significant from us. And there were other things we learned about his life that summer that would have been difficult for any parent of any teenager to absorb, regardless of the identity element. We also didn't know anyone else going through this. Not in our community, not in our congregation. The isolation was real. And yes, I'll be honest about this too. There was some other kind of pride involved. The ego kind. Wondering how we would be judged, what people would think of us as parents, how we would be perceived at church, in our neighborhood, among our family. That concern didn't last long. The people who judged were far outnumbered by the people who loved, all of us. But it was there, and pretending otherwise wouldn't be honest. Even I have moved 12 times in 29 years, and 5 times since that summer. As we moved forward from Tennessee to Frankfurt, Montreal, New Jersey, Boston, Irvine, California, we got more comfortable telling this story. We started using it as a point of introduction in new communities. New jobs, new congregations. Not because it was easy, but because every single time we shared, something happened. Someone thanked us. Someone said they'd been holding to a similar story and hadn't known who to tell. Someone had a friend, a sibling, a coworker navigating the same terrain and didn't know where to point them. Being LGBT parents stopped feeling like something that had happened to us and started feeling like something we were, part of our identity, and eventually one of the parts we are most proud of. I also learned through those dozens of conversations with other parents that the most important thing I can do in those moments is share without judging. Every family situation is different. Every child is different. Even in our house, our 4 kids are completely different people with 4 completely different paths. The lesson I took from our experience with Isaiah became the thing I could offer to other parents. Your children's lives are theirs, not yours. The less you project your picture onto them, the more you can actually celebrate who they're becoming. That doesn't mean stepping back from parenting. It means holding your expectations loosely enough that there's room for their reality. Allyship isn't a credential you earn and then keep. It's a practice. 12 years into this journey, I still find myself in conversations where I'm the one being expanded, where someone else's experience stretches something I thought I already understood. The context has shifted too. Pride Month in 2026 carries more weight in some ways than it did when I wrote the first article. The legal and cultural landscape has changed. The need for allies who show up, not just in June, but consistently, visibly, and without condition, feels more urgent. So here's what I'd offer, not as a marketer with a framework, but a person and a parent who's been doing this for a while. 1. Share your story. Not because it's easy, but because you never know who needs to hear it. Every time Eva and I opened up in a new city, someone found us who needed us too. 2. Grieve what you need to grieve, and then move forward. You're allowed to mourn the picture you had. You're not allowed to make your child responsible for your grief. 3. Hold your expectations loosely. I couldn't have predicted what any of my 4 kids would be doing at this point in their lives. That unpredictability is not a failure. It's the whole point. 4. Don't judge other parents. There are no perfect parents in this territory. They're just people trying with different information, different faith traditions, different family histories, and different kids. Lead with love. Finally, show up in June and in September and in January. Allyship isn't a month. It's an ongoing responsibility, not just for family, friends, and colleagues who celebrate Pride, but for everyone who is underrepresented and underserved in our communities. To those celebrating Pride Month, happy Pride. To those still figuring out what your role is in someone else's story, start by listening to them, then keep showing up. Gay, bi, trans, and Lily. 4 kids who make me proud, 4 years of saying it out loud. That's it for this week's Brandistry Buzz. One more idea to help you navigate whatever comes next. If this episode made you think, subscribe wherever you're listening so you don't miss what's next. And come find me on LinkedIn where I'm posting between episodes, trends, takes, and the occasional things that I'm still figuring out. Prefer to read? Brandistry Buzz is also a weekly newsletter on LinkedIn and Substack. Links are in the show notes. I'll be back next week. In the meantime, stay ready.